Today's podcast is sponsored by AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens. It's the only conservative alternative to AARP. Join today at amac.us/Carter. Really excited today, guys. We're going to be joined by radio host of the Morning Answer and the IE Answer on AM 590 and AM 870, and that is Jennifer Horn, the Answer in California. She's going to be talking everything about California, but how that reflects on the rest of the nation and why we're seeing not only people in not just the Midwest, but on the East Coast, but on the West Coast, completely frustrated with the direction of our nation, with the direction of the executive branch and President Biden, and of course, the Democrats. We'll also be talking about the Supreme Court's decision on Title 42. We're going to go into detail about that and what it means for the border crisis. And we're going to be talking about all the great wins that we have seen for our nation. And I'm not just talking about conservatives, right? I'm talking about everyone. The great wins we've had in the Supreme Court for all of us and for our nation and for our founding fathers and our principles that they stand on, right? This is going to be for us. Please follow and subscribe. Get all the links at SaraACarter.com. That is SaraACarter.com. And while you're there, please sign up for our email list. This way you do not get shadow banned, right? I want to be able to communicate with you, and the only way to do that is to actually have a connection with you on our email list. And I do go through those emails, and I read a lot of your emails. And in fact, I'm going to start reading some of them on the air here in this podcast at the Sara Carter Show. I think that's important. And also going through some of your Twitter feeds and reading some of your responses because they're great. And by the way, congratulations to Cat Turd on Twitter, whose litter of puppies that were born are super cute. And I love looking at them every single day. I'm excited to have, like I said, Jennifer Horn here on the show. But before I get to her, I want to talk to you a little bit about another great American. And that's Mike Lindell and his company, MyPillow. And you all know how great these products are. I mean, Mike Lindell is probably one of the best salesmen in the country. He has one of the best products in the country. I think everybody in America has a MyPillow somewhere in their house. But right now we have MySlippers, and those MySlippers are on sale now. Listen to this. You can save $90. My listeners, you can save $90 right now with Mike Lindell, with MyPillow, on his slippers. They are regularly $139.98. Now you can get them for $49.98. You cannot beat that. But you can only do it with the promo code. You can only do that with my name, promo code Carter, CARTER. Look, it took 2 years to develop this exclusive 4-tier cushioning system. Wear them inside, wear them outside, wear them wherever you want. They are great. They last. They are high quality. So go to MyPillow.com/Carter. That is MyPillow.com/Carter, or call 1-800-685-7221. That's 1-800-685-7221 for the MySlippers at only $49.95. While you're there, take advantage of the deep discounts on all MyPillow products, including the BOGO extravaganza on the bed sheets, on the MyPillows, and so much more. And little Macy, she loves sleeping on the MyPillow dog bed, although she's very small in the very large dog bed that I have for her, but she loves it, loves it, loves it. So will your dogs. Remember, visit MyPillow.com/Carter or call 1-800-685-7221 today. Call them today for the most comfortable slippers you'll ever own, and you'll get Mike's book free. MyPillow.com/Carter or call 1-800-685-7221. So before we get to Jennifer Horn, I'm going to ask her about this because, you know, I first started my career in California. So the issue of immigration, border security was always a big issue, especially in the state of California. But the Supreme Court right now ruled that Biden can end Title 42. I honestly did not think that it would go the way that we all thought it would go. I did think that the Supreme Court would end Title 42. And the only reason is because right now, especially with COVID mandates, we've seen what's happened with the airlines. We've seen what's happening across the board, across the nation with mask mandates, all of that. So I didn't think it would really last. I didn't think we would be able to keep people across the border just because of COVID. But that doesn't stop this from being a really important issue, national security issue. It can't just be because of COVID. It can't just be because of Title 42. We know now, though, that Title 42 is gone. There is going to be an onslaught of people coming through. Look, the people that have already headed towards the border, they've talked about this. They've said, look, we believe that President Biden will end Title 42, and especially for those that were being returned to Mexico, now that's not going to be a reason to return them. They can just go ahead and apply for credible fear, any kind of fear. And remember, the Biden administration right now has removed the middleman, which is the immigration courts, the immigration judges. So basically, people can come in. They can say, look, I'm in fear of going back to my country because I'm gay. I'm in fear of going back to my country because I have a husband who beats me. I'm in fear of going back to my country because they oppose my religious beliefs. Whatever that is, they will end up just going to an asylum officer, United States Citizenship and Immigration Services asylum officer. That asylum officer is pretty much given them carte blanche to stay in the country. And they're not going to be necessarily going to the courts because the courts are overwhelmed. So what is the problem here in the United States? The problem's not necessarily Title 42, although, wow, thank God for it. Thank God that President Trump had that in place. I mean, there are still issues, right? With COVID, there are still issues with monkeypox, with a number of other issues, but it's not significant enough. The Supreme Court can't mandate that. They can't say, yeah, we're going to keep that right now. The Biden administration has a right to lift it. But what about all the laws that are in place? And I'm not talking about the executive orders that Biden overturned. I'm not talking about those. That was bad enough. But we have over 800,000 known gotaways. I'm going to say this again because I've said this on the show over and over. Since Biden has come into office, 800,000 known gotaways. This is besides the millions that have poured in that are here that we know of, that just walk up to Border Patrol like I've shown you on Sean Hannity's show. They just turn themselves in. But 800,000 known gotaways, people that peeked into cameras, people that left their footprints and their tracks in the dirt as they came across the border, the very open border, very porous border that we have been screaming about for decades. Those people are here in this country and we don't even know who they are. They're just doing whatever they want. We also know that more than 50 known terrorists, people connected to terrorism. Senator Marsha Blackburn talked about it on the show. We've had others come on the show and talk about it. We've had others like Gordon Chang warn about how that border is being used by China and by enemy nations like Iran and others, our weak, porous border, and how the Western Hemisphere is being plagued by these issues. And we have an administration that does nothing to secure our nation. And in fact, it does just the opposite. It does everything possible to disrupt and destroy our country's ability to protect itself. So basically, we have an executive branch that does nothing to protect our country. This isn't just about Title 42. This is about the fact that we have people in office, in our bureaucracy, in our government, that refuse to protect you, the American people. And that is a pretty frightening thing. Let me read this to you right now so that you understand what happened here with the Supreme Court, because I think we've had huge wins on the EPA front. We've had huge wins, as concealed carry with New York. We've had huge wins, Roe versus Wade, giving it back to the states, letting the people make the decisions, taking away the ability. Look, the court should not be there to legislate law. I mean, this is not what they do, right? That's not what the court is supposed to do. And the Supreme Court knows that. You got to give the power back to the people, whether that's the EPA, whether that's Roe versus Wade, whether that's allowing Biden to end Title 42. But it's up to the executive branch to do their job, to protect the American people, to protect us from foreign enemies and domestic enemies. And we all know what that means. We shouldn't have a bureaucracy that weaponizes the system against the American people. That should not be. That should not exist in America. And we have seen that the American people are fighting back. But let me read to you what the Supreme Court did here. The Supreme Court has sided with the Biden administration in a 5-4 decision in Biden versus Texas. The court ruled Thursday that the Biden administration has the authority to reverse the Trump administration's Remain in Mexico policy. Under the Trump-era policy, migrants seeking entry into the United States had to remain in Mexico as they waited for their hearings. Now, I totally 100% agree with that. 100%, but that should be across the board. Nobody should be coming into this country illegally. There should be very few exceptions for that, and there are very few exceptions for that. Those laws already exist. They already exist. So why are we opening our doors? Why are we allowing people to just walk into our country? Why are they doing this? That is the question that we all need to be asking. And I think some of us know why, or at least we suspect. Chief Justice John Roberts wrote the majority opinion, of course he did, joined by Justices Brett Kavanaugh, Sonia Sotomayor, Stephen Breyer, and Elena Kagan. The majority held that Biden administration has not violated the Immigration and Nationality Act, and that the memoranda issued by DHS in October repealing the policy represented final agency action. Break this down. What they meant is that the DHS has the authority to end that. And I think that we knew 50-50. I actually believed it was 75, right? Percent that it was going to go this way. That the DHS would have that authority. But the thing is that the laws are already on the books. What the DHS has done and what the Biden administration has done is actually tied the hands of our federal law enforcement officers at the border and have not given them the authority to do their jobs. And in fact, they have become just an extension of what the drug cartels and the human traffickers have done. Look at what happened to the people. Over 50 people died just this past, and that's just one incident in the back of an 18-wheeler tractor trailer. They died in heat, exhaustion. They were locked in to a tractor trailer. They were locked in the back, temperatures as high as 170 degrees. As high as 170 degrees in there. They suffocated, they died, they had no water, they had no air. And all of this because we perpetuate a policy that literally allows the drug cartels and the human traffickers to operate and make hundreds of billions of dollars. And that is why everybody was afraid of Title 42. That is the reason why everybody was terrified of this going away, because they know that this administration is doing nothing to stop the flow of people at the border. And right now, the Department of Homeland Security expects those numbers to skyrocket. Listen to this. 7,000 people or so a day coming through the border. Now watch 18,000, and that's at minimum, a day coming through the U.S. southern border. I want you to think about that and think about what that is going to do to our nation. And that's a pretty frightening prospect. He's made it easier for terrorists to enter the United States through the southern border. People are going to be coming through. People are going to die. Right now, I've got the latest numbers, and I got these numbers from a source in Border Patrol. Over 509 deaths in this fiscal year at the border already. Think about it. Over 509 deaths. And those are the people that we know about. There are so many more that we don't find. And so many more that die on the journey here. This is supposed to be a humanitarian effort. The Democrats are lying to you. The Democrats don't care one iota about these immigrants. They don't care one iota about the children that are being trafficked, about the children that are being used and abused sexually and physically on that journey, about the women, about the men. And the only people benefiting from this are those drug traffickers and those human traffickers. And by the way, leftist regimes in our hemisphere that I personally have heard and believe that utilize that humanitarian, quote unquote, reasoning to politically motivate themselves and move people in the United States to basically unbalance our own nation. They use it against us. It is a weapon against us. We have seen irregular warfare by the Chinese with the movement of fentanyl into this country. We're seeing the same situation with the movement of human beings into the United States. And we've seen what happened in El Salvador, Nicaragua, Honduras, and across the board, Guatemala, Mexico. We have seen what this is doing to our country. Think about the remittances, the billions of dollars that are going back into these nations. They have every reason to want to flood our country. So not only are they abusing us, are they using us? Their people are suffering, and our enemies are taking advantage of it. This is what scares me. And now we know we have terrorists, that we have captured people connected to terrorist organizations at our border. And we don't know how many more we've let in. And there may be sleeper cells in this country. We don't know. We don't know. I've spoken to intelligence officers, people who have worked overseas, people who have worked in our hemisphere, in Mexico, as well as in other parts of South America and Central America, who have said that absolutely 100% our enemies, that includes Iran and all of the proxies connected to the Iranian regime, Hezbollah, as well as ISIS, as well as Al-Qaeda and others, have all been eyeing that border. Let me read this to you. The state and Homeland Security departments last week amended federal immigration laws to allow foreigners who provided insignificant material support to designated terror groups to receive immigration benefits or other status, according to the policy published in the Federal Register. Examples of individuals who would fall into the new category, according to the announcement, include individuals who provided humanitarian assistance or routine commercial transactions to terror groups. How is that even possible? How did that even happen? The policy shift is fueling concerns that the Biden administration wants to make it easier for individuals who work with or for Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the country's paramilitary fighting force that has killed hundreds of Americans, I would say thousands, and our allies too. The IRGC is responsible for so many deaths. So many deaths. The IRGC is responsible for basically planning under the Obama administration to assassinate the Saudi ambassador to the United States in Washington, D.C. And they were working on hiring someone in Mexico to do that. It was President Obama's administration under the Justice Department that had that case and filed charges. So how is this possible? Because they are so desperate to revive the Iran nuclear deal? What's going on here? How do you do this? Not even a 5-year-old could be this stupid. Not even a 5-year. I mean, this is just absolutely ridiculous. It's absolute insanity. It's like we're selling our country out. Notice of this change came several days before the Biden administration and hardline Iranian government resumed talks aimed at securing the revamped version of the 2015 nuclear deal. So basically, because they want that deal, they're letting our enemy, Iran, and the enemy of our most important ally in the Middle East, which is Israel, they're going to allow them to bring terrorists into our country and allow those people connected to terrorism, people that brown bagged money for Hezbollah while they were in Lebanon, which were part of probably the attack on the Jewish center in Argentina a long time. All these people that were connected to the most horrific acts of terrorism into our nation. Even though President Trump did the most amazing thing of one of the top things of his presidency was targeting Soleimani. Thank God. But I want you to remember this, that when they killed General Soleimani, who was top of the IRGC and a hero to the Iranian regime, what did Iran do? Iran threatened the United States and said that they would get vengeance back. What do you think Iran's doing right now? Iran's preparing. It's getting ready to target us. Our enemies see us as weak now, especially under Biden. We see how Vladimir Putin has responded to President Biden and the administration. We're watching right now how China is responding to the administration. We've seen what Biden has done in Afghanistan. And what he did in Afghanistan opened the door for our enemies to just go haywire across the globe. Our nation is suffering, not just on a national level, but across the board with foreign policy as well. So I'm very, very happy to have radio host and super personality Jennifer Horn on the show. Jennifer, thank you so much for being with me today. I really appreciate it. This is fun.
It's so fun. First of all, I love being on the radio with other conservative, or in podcasts as well, with other conservative women, because there aren't as many of us as there are boys out there. So it's fun to have a little girl time with you. Plus, I told you off the air, I'm such a huge fan of the work that you do. I really think you are an important voice, and some of the stuff that you have revealed, it really, really matters. So thank you for what you're doing. I really love being here with you today.
Oh, thank you so much, Jennifer. And it's funny because we were talking just before we got on, and I know everyone's going to love this, but I just finished going on with Steve Hilton, and I know that he was getting ready to talk to you too. So I love Steve Hilton. I think he is just phenomenal. What a great American, and it's just such a wonderful personality to have on Fox, and such a great show. But I was thinking it was pretty funny. Steve's probably like, where is Jennifer now? Where is she?
We're all happy warriors, so we're like in the club together, right? And I think it matters. I love doing Steve's show. I do it every week with him on his podcast. So we have a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. He has a great podcast and really focused on what's happening in California. But just like I told you, I think California really is an example of a microcosm. And I'm looking at this in a positive light, right, of what's happening across the country. I think Americans are waking up. They are frustrated and angry with this, cancel culture, wokeism that has led to, just the most insane insane policies that our nation has ever seen. And we're seeing that reflected in the people standing up to the administration, people standing up to people even within local governments. And let's just start out with Gascon. He is looking at a recall right now in California. What's up with that? Fill us in.
Fingers crossed. And I think you're absolutely right. I always call California, because, a lot of people go, just leave California, just get up and leave it. But California is the petri dish for the rest of the country. They test things out on us, see what works, what they can get across. All of these voting rights bills that they want to pass on a national level, they all roll out in California. So we have to stop the craziness here. We have to show that we're willing to fight back. And if California can, I think that sends a huge message to the left across the country. So it's important. But George Gascon is something. He has been in office for just about 2 years. There was a recall effort against him about a year ago. That one failed. They were not quite well organized enough. The second time around, they're doing a great job. They have all of the victims, not all, but some of the victims of Gascon's policies who are really driving this effort. The former DA in Los Angeles County, Steve Cooley, is involved, a former council member, Dennis Zine. There's some really big names that have come to provide some structure to this. And they've been collecting signatures. The 6th of July is the last day for signatures to be turned in. And I'm so happy to tell you, Sarah, that they met their marker, and they've been qualifying the signatures as they go. So they've got enough good signatures to get this on the ballot. I think they needed about 566,000. So they've done that. Now they wanted to get more because the California Democrats and the swamp love to keep their own in power. So even with qualified signatures, they're going to try to throw some out. So they were trying to get at least another 100,000. I think they've gotten at least another 65,000. But if you haven't signed and you're listening to this podcast, or you think you haven't signed, print out the petition, sign it, get it in as soon as you can, because every single signature will matter. And the reason I know that Gascon's nervous is he's actually been holding press conferences. The guy was silent for like months and months and months and months. And now he's getting called out, and he's having to talk to people. And he sounds ridiculous with his justification for these policies that are literally leaving people dead in his wake.
Right. And there's a lot of family members, people that have been affected by the wave of crime in California that are standing up to him. I also saw this article where Richie Greenberg, the founder of the movement that succeeded in recalling San Francisco's district attorney, Chessie Bowden, joined the effort to actually recall Gascon. So he is really feeling the pressure all around. And I know that the people of Los Angeles, they have to be frustrated with the direction of the city, with the surge in crime, with people living on the sidewalks. Like I saw that in Portland. I see that in Los Angeles. I've seen that across the board where you can't even walk your children down the street out of fear, that something will happen to you and your family. And I mean, I don't think I'm over exaggerating this. Even Santa Monica and Venice Beach.
35 cities in LA County have voted no confidence in George Gascon. The most recent is El Monte, and they voted no confidence. A fully Democrat city council.
Wow.
They voted unanimously no confidence because of their 2 police officers that were killed, that were ambushed by a criminal that should have been in prison for violating his parole, but George Gascon let him out. The other story that got national attention, and you probably saw it, is the mother who's pushing her baby in a stroller down an alley, and this kid out of nowhere comes around and mows them down. This is a kid who was supposed to be in jail. He tried poisoning one of his classmates. She had a seizure and ended up in the hospital, and he ended up in juvenile camp. Like, what is juvenile camp? Summer camp? There's no real penalty for criminals in George Gascon's Los Angeles. And so people are waking up. And I will say that, we've been watching what Latino Hispanic voters are doing across the country, right? We see the move towards President Trump in Florida. We saw him doing really well with that demographic. I really believe it's California that is it's Latino voters in California that are going to save our state because they are the ones who are supporting these recalls. The recall of Gavin Newsom was driven by Hispanic voters in the state. That was the highest turnout and the highest support of any other demographic in the state was Hispanic voters who said enough is enough because their communities aren't safe anymore. Our communities aren't safe anymore. You can't send your kids to school anymore without feeling like that your life is at risk. It's ridiculous. It's not an overstatement.
No, it is not an overstatement. And the mother who pushed for the toughest charges, the mother that had the stroller was Rachel Hart. And I mean, I think it was so stunning to watch what happened, to see that video. The whole nation saw it. And it was just such a slap in the face to know what had happened and what was happening to this criminal, and that the victims were once again victimized, right? And I think that's what people keep feeling. They keep feeling that they're being re-victimized over and over again. You brought up a really great point, Jennifer, about the Latino vote and about the Latino Americans, Hispanic Americans in our country. My mother came from Cuba. I'm a first generation Hispanic American here on my mother's side. And I think that the Democrats have clearly misjudged completely the Hispanic voter. They're conservative, hardworking. They're a part of the fabric of America. And they are seeing clearly now through all the mud and the swamp and everything that these Democrats have laid out, that where they have been led is completely wrong. And now they're standing up. We saw that with Mayra Flores, getting voted here in Texas, her big win. And we're seeing that across the nation. And I agree with you on Donald Trump. I'm very excited about what you said about California, though, and that the Hispanic voter in California is really a part of this wave of change, because I think that is going to be the biggest upset in the midterms. What do you think?
California is not going to turn blue overnight, but I think we can get it to a nice shade of lilac. And I think we can do that with these incremental victories. We can get these recalls done. We already did in San Francisco. We can do it in Los Angeles. We could elect a mayor who is a Democrat, but is a little more common sense, and Rick Caruso. And it's really funny because you're seeing the left start to freak out a little bit that they're losing these votes that they just took for granted. So what I think's interesting about California is that we are a Latino majority state. So there are more Latinos here than anybody else in the state of California at this moment. And it seems to me in all the research that I've been looking at, and in my friends that I'm talking to, those kitchen table issues that Glenn Youngkin called them in Virginia, I used to call them, when I'd go out and do speaking engagements, I always called them quality of life issues. So he branded it a whole lot better than I did. But certainly it's safety, it's schools, it's affordable housing. It's those things that really matter. And Democrats used to try to pretend that they stand for that, but they are so off the rails, pushing for late-term abortions now, pushing transgender athletes. They have totally lost what people are looking to use the government for, and that is to help them flourish, right? And the government has left those voters behind in California. And so now you've got Latinos pushing back. You have Black men who came out and supported Rick Caruso, who is a Democrat. If you don't know Rick Caruso's story, and I know you've probably followed him, Sarah, but for those who haven't been following local politics, he's a billionaire developer. Look, I'm a Trump person. I'm a MAGA person. He wasn't so great to Donald Trump. So I don't love him, but I definitely think he's better for Los Angeles than Karen Bass, who was on the short list of candidates for vice president with Joe Biden. We know what she stands for. There was a piece in the LA Times, because more Black men supported Rick Caruso than I guess was acceptable by the left. Erica Smith, who writes for the LA Times, says, well, it's clearly that they're sexist.
They're
crazy. After lunch.
This is what's so crazy. It's like wait a minute. Black men can't have just a mind of their own. That everybody has to be stuck with the Democratic Party. I think this is what's angering so many Hispanics and, Black voters and whatever nationality or color or wherever you come from. You are a part of the fabric of this great nation, and you should be treated as an equal, not as a commodity.
Yes.
They don't own you. The Democratic Party is it's crazy.
That's what they think, though. And they were historically, the Democrat Party is the party of slavery. And I don't know, this is not to raise headlines or controversy, but it sure feels to me that they are anticipating that certain groups of people just have to vote for them. If not, they're going to be shunned. They're going to be called names. As a woman in Los Angeles, I get looked at all the time. How can you be a Republican? Your husband must tell you how to vote. I mean, it's ridiculous. No, I am a thinking person. I can figure this out. Same thing with Black men. It's not that they're sexist and think that Karen Bass as a woman can't run Los Angeles. Maybe the ideas need to change. And
I
like
guess small businesses,
Republicans.
Like small businesses need to be supported. Like, why is Chevron leaving California and coming to Texas? Why did Elon Musk leave and come to Texas? Why has Amazon moved a lot? Because they do not know how to run a state the way it needs to be run. And we're seeing it's insanity. So, yeah, of course, whether I was a Black man or a woman or an it or a they or whatever pronoun you want to call me, I want to put more money in my pocket, feed my family, and be able to grow my business and not have the government stick their hand down into my bank account and rip out all my hard-earned money and live in a state that doesn't even want to protect me. That's just common sense.
Get mowed down by a car driven by someone who should be in jail. It is just common sense. It's just sanity. With California, and this is why we have to stop it here, because this kind of mentality is coming for the whole country.
Let me ask you this, Jennifer. What's going to happen in California right now, especially like one of the big issues is the homeless crisis, the homelessness. We've seen an increase in narcotics and drug usage. Fentanyl is a huge issue. Heroin, I saw that up in Portland. I saw that in California. And of course, dealing with the mentally ill. How are Californians handling that? What do they want necessarily to be done about that? I mean, that is a big problem.
Yeah. It is. And I think for a long time, they used to say, well, Republicans just want homeless people off the street. Rich people don't want to look at them, or Republicans don't want to look at them. Look, I can't stand seeing people live and die on the streets. That is not a life that is flourishing. That is not a life that has a future. When you have people who are dying in the gutter, I can't watch it because it makes me sad. And it makes me sad because there are so many private programs and so many religious groups who have outreach programs and many missions and shelters that a lot of times will just sit empty. Right. So one of the big lies with the homeless crisis is that it's a housing issue or it's a beds issue. It's really not. It is a mental illness and drug addiction issue. And until we have a politician, Democrat or Republican, who's willing to have that really hard conversation, because it's not an easy one to have, And really, I've rolled through it as a conservative in personal freedoms and a supporter of due process. You really have to think through what the government can really do. But there has to be something. If Britney Spears can be in a conservatorship for 12 years, we can figure out how to get people help and into treatment programs on the street. And one of the ways that we can do that, and it's one of the reasons why I have given my support to Rick Caruso for mayor, is if you listen to him speak, he talks a lot about beds. And there is a rule in a law on the books in California that says you can give people that you arrest a choice between jail and treatment if you have a certain ratio in the number of beds. So instead of focusing on housing, which we can talk about in a second, you focus on getting more beds. And then if you get to that certain ratio, you allow police officers to start arresting people committing crimes. If they don't have pants on, if they're disrupting the peace, if they're using drugs on the sidewalk, allow police to arrest them, get them into a place where they can choose. Do you want to go to jail or do you want treatment? And this is how we move forward in Los Angeles to start chipping away at a problem that is at least 100,000 deep in Los Angeles. I tend to think they undercount. But
wow, I think so too. I think they do undercount that.
Yes. And when it comes to the Gavin Newsoms and the Eric Garcettis, who is our current mayor in LA, they tend to think you throw money at the problem and it's going to get better. So in Los Angeles, we added to our sales tax with a local measure it was Triple H. And it was going to be taking money from the sales tax and putting it into housing programs for the homeless. Everybody votes on it because it sounds pretty. Sarah, the median cost of the houses that they've built so far using all of this money, $745,000. The median cost of the government housing that they're building. What are they doing?
What are they building?
They have no bid contracts. Yeah. I mean, you can go out and buy, it's not cheap in Los Angeles, but you get a 2-bedroom house for $745,000. You don't have to build special housing here.
Right.
And so I think we have to figure out.
Are people just lining their pockets and lining their friends' pockets with this contracts. Money? That's what I am thinking, is that a lot of these programs are not ever reaching the people that they are intended to reach. That they are literally lining someone's pocket, lining a friend of yours or a friend of theirs or a friend of this or a friend of that to build these homes that end up with no one in them. Because if you give the person a choice on the street, more than likely they'll say, look, I want to live on the street. I don't want to go. But if you arrest them and hold them accountable for breaking the law and say, well, you only got 2 choices here. You're going to go to jail or you're going to go to rehab. So you go ahead and pick. Neither one's good, but nobody wants to, withdraw, especially if they're on heroin. And that happens all the time. Like I saw that in Portland, or I saw like in Target. I told Steve, I couldn't believe this was before COVID. I'd flown out to LA to do Steve's show. And I went to Target in the morning. It was like near Beverly Hills I think it was off of Wilshire. And I went to Target. It was 8 a.m. in the morning. I walk in to get a curling iron and I see these guys, security guys, they're walking down an aisle and they're spraying Lysol and I smell something really terrible and I don't know what it is. And there is a woman and she is homeless and she is naked and she only has a coat on, and 2 young security guys have to walk behind her with Lysol. A little girl was screaming, Mommy, the lady is naked. And I walk up to the manager and say, wait a minute. I don't understand this. It's humiliating for her. She's obviously mentally ill, and it's wrong that a child has to see this. Why can't you call the police? And they said, we can't. They won't do anything. They won't come and get her.
They won't. And this is something that just happened to me it was pre-pandemic, probably in 2019, I want to say, just to give you a little context. But it's funny and ironic because I had just purchased my first firearm. And I come home late at night, my gun in the box in a plastic bag. And I walk into my house, pitch black. It's 11 o'clock. I live by myself. And I hear voices. And now the smart person would have left the house and tried to figure it out. But, the brain cells were not working so much. The hamster was off her wheel. And I walked into the house and I said, did I leave the TV on this morning? I'm kind of listening. And then I said, hello, who's in here? And I hear the voices stop. And I hear them say, someone's in the house. Now, I should have taken off. But, your adrenaline goes. And I see a light flash. I have a lot of windows in my living room. I see a light flash by the outside. So I realize whoever these people are on the outside of my house. And so I go and throw open the door and yell as authoritatively as I could, "Who's out here?" And I see a woman. It turns out it was only one woman, but she was talking to herself, which made me think there were multiple people. A homeless woman who had set up camp, shopping cart, the whole 9 yards on my patio, and was trying to argue with me that this was her home and that I was trespassing. And I called the police. I live in the jurisdiction of the LAPD. I call 911. They say someone's going to come. I wait 40 minutes. No one comes. She's out there. Now, at this point, I don't know if it's one or two people. I figured it out. So my dad happened to be coming past my house on the freeway. And I said, "Dad," because he was out late too. I said, "Can you just come over here and like help me check this out?" So between the two of us, we were able to get this woman out of my yard. We lock all the gates, go to bed. The next morning, she's back in my yard again.
Oh, no. See, this is the issue. This is the issue.
Yes,
Go ahead.
this is the issue. And after I had called the police and they didn't come, they called back, which was laughable with the LAPD, and they said, "Do you still need help?" Now, if I had been dead on the floor, the help would have been too late 2 hours later.
Right.
But they were on some sort of citywide tactical alert. They couldn't send someone out. So the next day I said, "Look, this woman, it keeps coming back to my house." Well, when she heard the sirens, she started running. And she turned the corner. The squad car gets her. She sits down on the sidewalk. I come around the corner. They check my ID to make sure that I'm not lying about where I live, because she's still keeping up the story that this is her home. And finally, the police officer says, "All right, we'll arrest her for trespassing." But it's her 150th arrest.
See, this is what happens when she actually crosses the line and goes further than just sitting on your porch, but attacks you or attacks someone else because. Go ahead.
I heard from people in the neighborhood she tried to steal a kid from an elementary school that she thought was hers. This is someone who was sick. She needs treatment, and 150 arrests. I said, "Well, what happens? Do you even keep her?" No, she's out in 3 hours. We book her and she's out.
So this is why Americans are so frustrated. And not only that, you talked about being a gun owner, and I want to get to this because this is huge, huge story in California. I mean, the Department of Justice basically in California on Wednesday acknowledged that the agency let out all this personal information on hundreds of thousands of gun owners. I mean, that's just crazy. I mean, this was a database that's supposed to be protected. I almost feel that they did it on purpose.
Oh, I think that, if I were a betting woman, I would say 99% chance that this was on purpose, because it happened. The timing of it is just so suspect. The Supreme Court on Thursday releases a decision against New York saying that you can't require a reason to carry a gun anymore. You just have to pass a background check and you can conceal carry. You can get those permits. It was almost impossible to get concealed carry permits in most of California. Now, you did have a couple of great sheriffs like Chad Bianco in Riverside and Shannon Dykes in San Bernardino who would give them out. Alex Villanueva, who's doing a great job in my mind as LA County Sheriff, started to give them out because he was aware of the crime rates on the rise. But even he would say, "You need to give us some justification." Right. So the Attorney General releases this portal, has it up, I believe, for over 4 hours before they even take it down. And on this are members of law enforcement who have arrested criminals, judges who have convicted criminals that probably want some retribution against both of those people. And then think about the people who would have concealed carry in California, Sarah. It's everybody who's had to justify it, right? It's not just your NRA member saying, "I want to carry." These are victims of domestic violence. Right. These are victims of someone who is a stalker. Maybe people have to sell or walk around with large amounts of money. They all have reasons for having these concealed carry permits, and now their name and their address and their demographic and all of their personal information is out there for the criminal element to come and re-victimize these people.
What is the Justice Department going to do if somebody ends up getting killed because they release these names? Are they just going to say, "Well, it was an accident. It wasn't our fault. Sorry about that"?
That's already what they're saying. And, I talked to a friend of mine, is Eric Early, he was running for Attorney General. He didn't make it into the top two. We have a jungle primary system in California, which is crazy. But he came in just short of second place, but he does sue. He has taken to task Gavin Newsom multiple times for oversteps. And I said, "Eric, is there a way that we can sue on behalf, or can these people sue on behalf of their privacy?" And honestly, you have to be able to prove that you have to wait for there to be standing. And for standing to happen, you actually have to have someone who gets hurt or dies. So you
Right.
can't even preemptively sue. You have to wait till something happens. Then you might be able to sue. But then you have to prove that it was an intentional act and with malice. And the way that everybody covers themselves in Sacramento, it's going to be incredibly difficult to file a lawsuit, although I think they should have to answer for it.
I absolutely think they should have to answer for it. And it would be awesome to see discovery too, to see like
Right.
what happened. You know, I want to see the emails.
great
Maybe we
point.
should FOIA everything, right? Just FOIA it all, make their lives miserable. But we know what they do. They sit on everything. So it's almost impossible. But if you had someone with a great lawsuit, right? Bring it up. Let's just see. Just lay the cards out on the table. It would be very interesting to see the text messages and the emails between everyone and how those names mysteriously got released, you know, because I think it's a
great point.
right. It's a dangerous situation.
Yeah, we should do that.
Let's do it. You and I,
Let's take them on. I talked to Sheriff Villanueva this morning on my radio show, and I said, what do you think about this Rob Hunt? He's like, he's just like the rest of them, just like George Gascon, just like Chesa Boudin. Everybody believes that this is intentional, that it was his attempt at being passive aggressive about the
Right.
Supreme Court decision or reminding gun owners who's boss in California.
Absolutely. And I really, really have a ton of respect for Sheriff Villanueva. I got a chance to meet him when I was out in California. And it was when I was working on a story there with Congressman Mike Garcia, who was just phenomenal at exposing what was going on in Antelope Valley, you know, about the illegal marijuana grows. So I think Villanueva is doing the best he can with what he has. And I know that, you know, he's somebody who actually cares about the city. And I remember standing out there with him and he's like, just look around. He's like, what can we do when we don't have anyone backing us and we got people like camping out on the street right next to, you know, the sheriff's office? You know, you got tents out there with people living on the street and you can't arrest people. I mean, that goes right back to the local government. And now I think the American people and the people of California are speaking out. Do you really think a big red wave is coming to California? Do you really think this is going to happen? Or
like I said, I think it's going to be a lilac wave. I do think that there are going to be some wins for Republicans. I think look, I'm an optimist. I want to stay here and fight. I don't believe in leaving my home and allowing leftist policies to just run through this state and this country. So I'm going to stay here and I'm going to do what I can. But that being said, I think there are opportunities for incremental victories. And I think it's come already with Chesa Boudin. I think it's very possibly going to come for George Gascon. I think for the first time in California in 15 years, we're actually going to get a Republican into statewide office. I believe Lanhee Chen is going to be the next controller of California. And that may seem like not a big deal, but the controller's office can audit the heck out of everything. And that's
nice.
What would be that would be a huge, it would help make things a little more equal. Even the LA Times endorsed him for that reason, because things are so one-sided in our state. So I think that there is room for great people. Mike Garcia is a friend of mine. I think he will continue. And I think California will pick up maybe 3 or 4 congressional seats and help Republicans with the red wave in Congress and in DC.
Again, from your mouth to God's ears. I sure hope so. I mean,
right?
California was not always, a solid blue state. In 1988, California voted for Republican George H.W. Bush for president. So it's not like it's going to be blue forever. And especially, I like the idea of it going lilac because, look, everybody was concerned about Virginia. There were a lot of people right before, it was Governor Youngkin. A lot of people said, there's no way, it's not going to happen. Youngkin's not going to win. And then swoosh, right? Youngkin comes in for a big victory. It only takes one stupid statement. It only takes one exposure, for things to shift and for the voters to say, you know what, we're not doing this anymore. We're just not going to do this anymore. We're going to find balance.
And the hope comes in the smaller offices. And this is what I tell people is that a lot of times, we focus on the presidency. It's more interesting. Maybe we focus on the governor's race. I really had hope that Larry Elder would have been the governor of California as we sit here and talk right now. The recall, I think, was still successful. It moved up the election cycle. It forced Gavin Newsom to have to kind of justify his existence a little bit, which he hadn't been forced to do before. There were a lot of people who were disappointed by that, but I do believe that the the thing that changed the tide, I think, for the recall, I would believe he was on track to get recalled, is the unions. The unions call in the pressure, their money, the support. And so at a statewide level, the unions are going to have that power, but
Right.
they can't be in every local race. And that's why it's so important for conservatives not to lose heart and faith and turn out and vote in every election and vote for school board and vote for sheriff and vote for city council, because that's where we can start to make real change. And the unions can't come and support every single one of those candidates. That's how we start to win things back incrementally.
Oh, gosh, 100% for everybody. When I was talking about making one stupid statement, that was Terry McAuliffe. And,
Yes.
and basically his statement, that parents don't have the right to be involved in their children's education. Remember that? And it was just like all of a sudden, I was in Virginia at the time, and it was like, wow, really? Really? And you just see parents, even Democrats, it didn't matter if they were in the middle. It didn't matter if they were Democrats. I had friends in Loudoun County, and they were like, yeah, no way. It's not happening anymore. We're done with this. So I believe California has that chance. Jennifer, it was so awesome having you on this podcast. I would love
Sarah.
for you to come back. I don't want to keep you from Steve. I feel like Steve's like sitting back going, I just want Jennifer. I'm just trying to go on my vacation. Sarah,
no, I love
talking.
it. I would love to come back anytime.
Okay. You got it, Jennifer. Thank you so much. I'll be talking to you soon. Guys, what we're seeing in California, I truly agree with Jennifer Horn, is what we're going to see reflected across the nation. She calls California is going to be a lilac state. I agree with her on that. I also think that California Hispanics are opening their eyes and seeing what's happening in the country and saying, no way, we do not want our state to go further down this destructive road that we've been on. And they are going to be really the salvation of our nation, will be the growing Hispanic voter base, as well as Black Americans and everyone else. I think we're just, common sense is taking over. And that's what we're seeing in the Supreme Court too, right? There is this massive shift of giving the power back to the people, of not legislating from the bench. And I think this Supreme Court is going to be, in the annals of history, the reason why, and let's give credit to President Trump. This is his legacy. And he should be enormously proud of this legacy, whether if it was by fate, but it was also by his decision making, that we have this amazing Supreme Court that has given the power back to the people. We see it both with what happened with the New York gun law, right? Conceal carry, and giving that Second Amendment, giving that back to the people and saying, yeah, no, sorry, New York, you can't do that to the people. You can't block the people from protecting themselves. And we heard what, Jennifer Horn had to say about what was happening in California. And, as Americans, it's tough. Mass shootings, it always gets politicized, right? What happened here in Texas was horrific. Uvalde, it was probably one of the hardest stories I've ever done. My God, I can't even imagine what these parents are still going through, what our nation is still going through. But that is not a reason to stomp on the Second Amendment. That will never stop. Look, and I'm telling you the truth, no matter how hard we try, bad guys will always try to get weapons. They will always be people committing crimes. We have to try to mitigate that, but you don't throw out everything. You don't throw out everything. You don't break the Constitution. You don't destroy this amazing republic. You don't do that. You find a way to make it better. And you give people what they need to protect themselves. And look, as far as Roe v. Wade, amazing. You gave it back to the states. You give it back to the people. Let the people make the decisions. And with the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, and that ruling right now, the EPA ruling is phenomenal. Because we have seen, and I'll go into details with this. In fact, I want to bring somebody on who's an expert regarding the EPA and over-regulations. But we have seen what's happened with the EPA and what they've done to businesses in this country, and what they've done to small business, and what they've done to the American consumer. And I will go into details on that. And this is why that power was removed and given back to the people. and given back to the consumer. And we'll go into more details on that. There's also this really incredible story that I know is going to blow your mind, because the Biden administration just can't stop just the insanity of the border chaos, right? Their policy to just have a wide open border at the expense of our nation, both national security and at the expense of human lives, never ceases to amaze me. Well, right now, the Biden administration is planning on resettling migrants at a luxury private high school in North Carolina. A luxury private high school in North Carolina. This is absolutely unbelievable. And I want to tell you guys, a lot of times, people that are crossing the border, especially teenagers, aren't really teenagers. Some of them are over 18 and they lie and say that they're younger so that they can get in. And they've already been kind of, there is a lot of young children that do come across unaccompanied minors, but there's a lot of teenagers, pretend teenagers, that do come in and lie to the Border Patrol, lie to Immigration and Customs about their age because they have no identifiers on them, and it's impossible for us to check on them legally and to get actual, IDs on them. So they get put in a luxury private high school. Listen to this. This is from Breitbart. This month, the American Hebrew Academy announced that its sprawling 100-acre campus in Greensboro would be leased by Biden's Health and Human Services to resettle and house unaccompanied minors arriving at the U.S.-Mexico border. This is to tell you how many more people are coming across that border. We are just going to be moving people all across the country. They're going to be coming to your town. They're going to be moving next door to you. I'm not over exaggerating this. These are people who are not thoroughly vetted either. And that doesn't even include what I talked about at the top of the show, the 800,000. The contract will begin housing these unaccompanied minors early next month, and we'll have 800 staff to take care of them, provide educational courses, translation services, recreational activities, medical care, counseling, and security. What about our children? What about our children? What about our country? What about Portland and me walking through the streets over our teenage kids that are hooked on heroin, some of them? And what about fentanyl pouring into our country? What about our kids in high school that are walking, really literally living on the edge every single day? Because we put people that aren't even U.S. citizens ahead of them. What about our educational system, which is completely broken? What about that? What about fixing that? What about fixing our nation and putting our nation and its citizens first? What about stopping this ridiculous, unbelievable, chaotic border situation before Americans die? More Americans die. What about that? What about stopping this before a sleeper cell decides to conduct another attack like 9/11? Guys, our government's priorities are so backwards. They are so backwards, it's not even funny. And it's up to every single one of us to do the right thing. To do the right thing, to get out there and vote. Listen to what Jennifer Horn said. Listen to what all the guests say on this show. Everybody, I bring you solutions. I'm not just talking about the problem. It's about us getting out there and voting these idiots out of office. And it's about us taking responsibility for our nation again. I mean, I see it happening. It's starting to happen. We just have to believe. We have to make it happen. That is our power. That is the gift that our founding fathers gave us. I want to read you just a little bit more before I let you go, because you're not going to believe this. This is not just a regular high school. This high school in Greensboro, North Carolina, the tuition costs as much as $42,000 a school year. The campus has 31 buildings, 35 student apartments, and an $18 million athletic center and a 22-acre private lake. Geez, I would just... You know how many people are going to be lying to go there? You know how many people are going to want to go there? I mean, that's like a free pass, right? Can you even imagine? Why not help our children in the inner cities? Why not do that first? Stop all the violence in Chicago, the gang violence, that give our kids something to hope for. Why not spend a little bit more time, right, Mayor Lori Lightfoot? You don't want to talk about that. And other Democratic cities, what about focusing on our children, focusing on our nation, focusing on one another? This is absolutely unbelievable. My daughter goes to a public school, right? She went to private school, was a small private school when I didn't live in Texas. Now she goes to a public school. You know, we have to be actively involved in our children's lives. Actively involved in our children's lives. And we need to make a difference for them. But if we allow the Biden administration to do this, you know, and to move hundreds of migrants, thousands of miles to receive this so-called luxury education, then that's on us. Then that's on us. Would it have been easier if the federal government had paid for her to go to a luxury private school? I don't know. This is crazy, you guys. This is crazy. We really need to start thinking about where our nation is going, where it's headed. I want to thank Jennifer Horn for being on this show. I'm so glad California is moving slowly to the lilac. Hopefully it'll rush to the red. Who knows? I mean, we can always hope, right? We can always pray. And for the rest of our country, remember, midterms are coming up. We need to be actively involved. God bless you. God bless our great nation. And God bless the great state of Texas.